We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxingego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Team Terence Crawford said they ain't checking for no damn one time. You better not duck me, thun. Keith Thurman or Kell Brook fights. They want the big dogs, Errol Spence, Manny, Pacquiao. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also subscribe to my channel for the latest and greatest. Get ESPN Plus pay-per-view. Tonight is his night, UFC 252. Order that pay-per-view using my link in the description box. And Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier, the trilogy, Judgment Day, Judgment Night, should be a good one. Use my link. It does help the channel. Now, let me jump right into it. Bomac was on The Boxing Voice, and I will link in the description. He had some interesting things to say, and I'll give my thoughts.
Fighting, it got to have meaning to these fights and shit. Keith Thurman don't got no damn belt. Do we? No, he ain't even ranked in the top 5 in the welterweight. Pierce won't. He want to clear the division out. And who got the 2 belts left? Pacquiao and Errol Spence. And those are the 2 fights that Terence won. It's real simple. Why would I waste my time or even sit down and say, man, we should fight that motherfucker? Man, fuck all that shit. Look, going to camp for 2.5 months and shit, and then go all through all of that, all finding sparring partners. I'd rather waste my time. I'd rather waste my time. Be quiet. I'm on the phone. I'd rather waste my time doing that looking for some sparring for Pacquiao or Errol Spence than try to do it for Keith Thurman. It won't mean anything if Terence did beat that dude. What is it going to say? What is it going to say? Nothing. Oh, Terence beat Keith Thurman. He should have beat him anyway because, Keith's arm is hurting or his hands is always hurting. Come on, man.
But don't you think it adds to the...
Wow. So, Bomac is claiming that a fight with Keith Thurman, they're not checking for, and nobody would give Crawford credit for it. And he said Kell Brook as well. My thoughts. So, I completely disagree with Bomac here. I haven't, to be honest, if Crawford fought Keith Thurman, I don't see who would make excuses and say it's not a good fight, and that's because Keith Thurman, he has 1 loss. He's not a champion. Bomac also said that Keith Thurman's not in the top 5, which is definitely, let's think about it. Let's say Errol Spence is the one, he got 2 belts. Then let's say Terence Crawford, right? That's 2. Then you have Sean Porter, Pacquiao. Then who would be the 5th person? You know what I mean? It would have to be between Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman. And Keith Thurman beat Danny Garcia. And he beat Sean Porter, who beat Danny Garcia. So since Keith Thurman beat Sean Porter and Danny himself, then I would have to say you would probably put Keith in that spot. No disrespect to Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia would be a strong 6. It's just a crowded division, So that's just my quick thinking. Unless there's another welterweight, who you guys, he's dope. But how could you put you guys over Keith Thurman when you guys has multiple losses, more than Keith Thurman? He hasn't been a champion like Keith Thurman. He doesn't have the resume. Keith Thurman fought Diego Chavez, Pacquiao, Sean Porter, Danny, like I mentioned. You know what I'm saying? So I don't agree with that from Bomac either. He said Keith Thurman's not top 5. I mean, I don't know how you would put Danny over Keith Thurman, and Keith Thurman fought Danny and beat him, and he also beat the other guy that holds a win over Danny Garcia, which is Sean Porter. So there's that. But my thing is this: the logic doesn't make sense to me unless Crawford has and is going to fight names that are supremely better than Keith Thurman. So he's saying that, oh, who's Keith? He's not top 5, which I just went over. He also said that we don't get credit for that and we're not checking for that. He don't got no damn belt. But at the same time, the only fighter that Crawford fought at the welterweight division, this is not my opinion, but the only person that he fought with a belt would be Jeff Horn. That was his very first fight at welterweight. He was undisputed at 140, moved up. First fight was Jeff Horn. And if we unpack that and break that down, I don't think Jeff Horn should have even been a champion. And I said this is not me reinventing the wheel or changing my narratives. Immediately after the Pacquiao fight, my channel, everything I'm talking about is, you could corroborate, you can research. The videos are still up. I don't delete any of my videos. They just stay up for eternity. But I did a post-fight review of Jeff Horn and Pacquiao, which was a good fight. You know, it was closer than people thought, but I still thought Pacquiao edged it. You know, he had Jeff Horn looking like he was about to get stung. You know, the Hornet was about to get stung in that 9th round. So I had Pacquiao winning, you know, not just for the 9th round, but just the overall fight. And it was a debatable one. So truth be told, Jeff Horn was kind of the weakest link at welterweight. I don't think he should have been a champion, put it that way. Like I said, I don't think he should have been a champion. Yet and still, that was Crawford's first fight off of being undisputed at a lower division. So I wasn't mad at it. I went and actually covered that fight, and I gave credit to Crawford, because I still think if you didn't at the time fight Jeff Horn in the proper way, then Jeff Horn, you know, he has some power and he's just kind of a wild guy, pretty durable, stuff like that. So Crawford stopped him. Pacquiao couldn't stop him. So I gave credit to Crawford, because I think you have to fight Jeff Horn a certain way or have a certain skill set at that 147 mark at that point. You know what I mean? He had just in his mind beat Pacquiao, and not even just in his mind, you know, on paper. So that's the only fight that Crawford has had at welterweight that was for a title. So that means every single title, voluntary defense, or whatever you want to call it, has been for a non-title. So to me, I'm a rational, reasonable person. The Bomac's point doesn't make sense to me, because he's saying, Crawford, why should we waste our time with a guy like Keith Thurman? He's not top 5. I already went over that. I do think he's top 5. And beyond that, even if he was top 6, 7, he's in the top 10 for sure. There's nobody that could say Keith Thurman at this point with one Pacquiao loss. Pacquiao's a Hall of Famer. So losing to him, that don't set you back to out of the top 10 when you only have one loss, and that's the only person that's ever beat you. And to Keith's credit, the front part of the fight was rough, and then he got hurt late with the body, but he did good in the back half. So I don't agree with that top 5 comment. But beyond that is, we know he's top 10 for sure. And I shouldn't even have to say top 10, because we know he's in the top of the division, right? Excuse me, my allergies. Smash the like button though. So there's that. And then in addition, Keith Thurman is, he's one fight removed against a Hall of Famer for losing his title. Like, so that's not the end of the world. But beyond that, even if that is your logic and logically that is your talking point, then how do you justify the different opponents? And me, I've never bashed Crawford's resume, and I know there's some people that do. I don't do that. I respect Crawford. I covered a lot of his fights. I'm just keeping it a buck. I got to keep it a buck like a dollar store, and my thing is, if that is just hypothetically, because I always try to put myself in the shoes of other people, listen to the argument. And my thing is, even with your talking points, you're saying, why should we fight Kell? Kell Brook does nothing for us. Why should we fight Keith Thurman? He ain't got no belt. But again, Jeff Horn was the only welterweight that you fought that did have a belt, and he shouldn't have had the belt because Pacquiao really beat him, in my opinion. Errol Spence told me that when I interviewed him, that he also thought Pacquiao won. So it's not like it's just I got this radical opinion. You know, they even had to rescore that Jeff Horn Pacquiao fight with 5 fresh judges, you know, because people were saying that it was controversy and Teddy Atlas was going off and all types of stuff. And that's what I think was one of the moments where they took Teddy Atlas off the ESPN live commentary crew, you know, things like that. So that alone doesn't make sense because Jeff Horn, again, shouldn't have been a champion. But even whatever, he was a champion. That's how the politics played out, whatever. So that was a champion fight for Crawford. But then that means everybody else, Jose Benavidez, Mean Machine, mandatory, and Amir Khan, then those fights, none of them had a belt. So why is the gold standard that Crawford has this prerequisite where he'll only fight a guy with the belt now, you know? So to me, that doesn't make sense because you fought Amir Khan. Amir Khan is not known for being durable. And that was a pay-per-view. Bob Arum, Team Crawford, ESPN, whatever, felt they should put that on pay-per-view. And people say he has a paper-mache chin and all that, right? And then if we're looking, see, when it comes to this boxing talk, this is why I've stood in my position for years, because I really do this and I really talk boxing. I really know boxing. I watch it. I know the players, the time, you know, I does this. So my thing is this: Amir Khan was coming off a Samuel Vargas performance where Samuel Vargas, who just got chewed up by Virgil Ortiz, had previously been stopped by Errol Spence, previously been stopped by Danny Garcia in Philly. Keith Thurman was there, and they had that Danny Garcia altercation with Keith Thurman. So Samuel Vargas, every time he stepped up, he lost. And then you have like a 22-year-old Virgil Ortiz stopping him as well. But Amir Khan, out of all those names, Amir Khan, you know, couple fights removed from the Canelo brutal knockout, Amir Khan struggled with Samuel Vargas. He was dropped in like the first 2 rounds. And then later, it looked like he was about to get stopped again, like in one of the later 11, or I don't know all the rounds off the top of my head. But he was like spilling about and, you know, he was looking bad for him. I'm like, wow, you know. So Samuel Vargas was super game. That was the performance that he was coming off of. That was the performance he was coming off of. So how could Bomac say that a Keith Thurman fight makes no sense, but Amir Khan was coming off a bad performance? Speaking of, Ray Robinson, in my opinion, beat Aegis Kavalauskas, or whatever his name is, Mean Machine, who Terence Crawford just fought. And that fight was ruled, I think, a draw or something like that. Let's Ray Robinson. Let's see if I can pull it up. Let me pull up UGOS to get to Ray Robinson because it's trying to bring up the original Ray Robinson. And I know they fought. Okay, boom. So, look, Aegis, this was the fight right before Crawford. And he gave Crawford, you know, a difficult first couple rounds. Look, Ray Robinson. See, I know my boxing, man. 2019, March 30th of last year, he fought Ray Robinson, Mean Machine, and he had a majority decision draw. And he really should have lost that fight. Just like Josh Kelly should have lost to Ray Robinson as well. So he didn't look good. His very next fight, boom, Terence Crawford. So my thing is this. You have 2 examples of recent welterweight performances. And to be honest, those welterweights were coming off of not strong performances. Ray Robinson, majority decision draw, but somehow he was still the mandatory, and he fought Crawford and gave Crawford, you know, he kind of got up for that fight and did better versus Crawford. He hurt Crawford. I think he should have been credited a knockdown. It was a knockdown, but Crawford, being who he is, having the experience he has, he figured it out and figured out the puzzle. And those guys were coming off bad losses. That's the point I'm making. Mean Machine was coming off a majority decision draw to Ray Robinson. and he didn't look good. He really should have lost that fight. And then, like I said, Amir Khan almost got stopped by Samuel Vargas, and that was the fight right before. Crawford fought him. So how could Bomac say that Keith Thurman or Kell Brook makes no sense? Kell Brook, I think he's won 2-3 fights in a row, since his loss to Errol Spence. His only loss was Errol Spence at Triple G. So those are, in fact, better welterweight fights. That's the point I'm making, So that, I don't know. None of it makes sense what Bomac is saying, in my opinion. He's a great guy. I've talked to him and interviewed him. I'm just being honest, like I always am on my channel. And, we still have to wait to hear from Bud Crawford to see if he mirrors these sentiments. But there's also an interview with Kell Brook and Crawford, and they're having a little bit of bravado, like, man, I'll beat you, I'll stop you, and trash talk it a little bit. So his trainer is saying that they're not even willing to entertain a Kell Brook fight. So what was that whole thing about? And not only Terence Crawford, but Bob Arum has mentioned Kell Brook's name. So it doesn't sound like everybody's in unison about what should be the next move for Crawford. Because you have Crawford confronting Kell Brook and saying like, oh, send a contract. Kell Brook literally just called out Crawford, right? Literally. And this is the problem I have with Bomac's standpoint. Look, he literally, this was 3 days ago. You see that? It says, Terence Crawford, I got someone here to take care of Gary Russell. Let me and you get our fight done. Give the fans a thriller. Right?
Let's carry it on. I've got a man for Gary Russell Jr., brother. Take care of him. Let's carry it on.
So Kell Brook said he's looking for that smoke, and then Bomac saying, nah, that's a weak fight. And he's also saying that Crawford won't get credit for beating guys like that. But, especially with the I actually don't have a problem with the Kell Brook fight. If he can't get the names that he's calling for, I wasn't stylistically. It's going to be a barometer fight. People are going to compare it to Errol Spence and how he did and, determine what they feel. But you can't have Kell Brook calling you out. And Keith Thurman just did an interview, called him out. Right. And then, hold on, let me see if I can show you. Brian Custer did an interview. It said, who does Keith Thurman want more, Errol Spence or Bud Crawford? Right now, I want Crawford more, man. He's gotten under my skin. Errol, that's a timeline issue. This Crawford dude, send me a contract, bro. Don't act like I'm going to run from you. You never weighed 147. You never got respect in the game anyway at 147. This is an upcoming interview with Brian Custer, so subscribe to his YouTube channel. And this is what Crawford is, being called out. And this is what Keith Thurman is saying. He's saying, I want Crawford. You ain't real at 147. You better not duck me, thun. And then Crawford's promoter, or excuse me, his manager and trainer is saying, we ain't checking for them. We want Spence and Pacquiao. But that's not realistic because, one, Errol Spence has an actual fight. He has an actual fight November 21st, Danny Garcia. So if Crawford, unless he's just on ice for the remainder of the year, there's no way he could fight Errol Spence. Errol Spence is already doing more than he needs to, coming off of a bad car wreck and a car accident, right? And fighting a Danny Garcia, right? So he's already above and beyond. He had a great 2019, fight of the year performance with Sean Porter, unification, then the Mikey Garcia fight, gets in a bad wreck, and he's already fighting Danny Garcia. So that's already more than I would even ask, because if he wanted to take a tune-up, I would say Errol Spence, he deserves that if he wants, but he doesn't want to. So he fighting Thanksgiving week, late November. So it's not realistic unless Crawford just plans on wasting away the rest of the year because of the pandemic, As far as Pacquiao, we don't know what he's 40 years old. He's, linked to Conor McGregor, linked to Mikey Garcia. He'll probably take one of those. And again, coming off of the Keith Thurman performance, I wouldn't be mad at that. Those are big money fights where you can make some money. So the walls are closing in on this argument for that Bomac is making, in my opinion. I'm just being real, like always. It just doesn't make sense. You know, it doesn't make sense to discount or put certain guys out of the picture because, listen, Crawford was known as the boogeyman, but it's hard to make the argument when Keith Thurman's calling you out, Kell Brook's calling you out, and then your trainer's saying, nah, we don't want none of them fights. Then before that, Sean Porter, people talked about Crawford and Sean Porter, and then Terence Crawford, you know, his side was kind of like, we're not really interested in Sean Porter. He don't have a belt anymore. Plus, we're good friends from the amateurs, so we know each other. So we don't know. That's not my first choice. So Sean Porter was basically a friend. So that's why that fight, you know, they said it wasn't really likely. And then he lost his belt to Errol Spence. So they're like, yeah, y'all weren't talking about Porter before. Why y'all talk about Porter now? So fine, Porter's your friend. You throw that out there. But then how could you discount Kell Brook and Keith Thurman and still be like the boogeyman or say you're ducked? You see what I'm saying? It just, that don't make sense to me because these are viable options. That's my whole point. Like, if that's like me saying I'm hungry and I'm starving and I'm going to pass out if I don't eat. And so it's like, hey, I got this, you know, ham and cheese sandwich and I eat. It's not like I'm vegan or nothing. I eat meat, pause. And I'm like, nah, I don't want that. Someone's like, hey, I got a burrito you could have. Nah, I don't want that. Hey, I got a salad. Nah, I don't want that. Then you're not that damn hungry. That's how I look at it. Because if you're that hungry, then when people are offering you brand new food that you could eat and you're starving, you're going to take somebody, you know, you're going to take somebody up on their offer. So that's my whole thing. You can't say that, oh, I'm most avoided, but then Team Crawford, and I say it collectively because all of it hasn't been Crawford saying this, but some of it may have been, like Sean Porter, right? Okay, don't fight Sean Porter because he's friends. Bomac saying we don't want Keith Thurman and we don't want Kell Brook. But then I believe Terence Crawford also said he ain't interested in Ray Robinson, who I guess has a win over him from the amateurs. And he's saying he don't want that fight either because it proves nothing, it does nothing. So it's like there's literally, out of a stacked division of people, there's literally two fights. Errol Spence or Pacquiao, that's the only fight you'll settle for. You know, that's too harsh of a standpoint from my taste. But even if that is your standpoint, then how do you justify the names that Crawford fought at welterweight after the one champion that he fought, Jeff Horn? You know, so we're just gonna take Keith Thurman out of the conversation because he lost to a Hall of Famer. That's not right. You know, he literally has one loss. He has 30 fights, 29 wins, one loss, and his sole loss was the Pacquiao fight. And it was a split decision loss. So it's not like, bro, Keith Thurman was doing good. He got dropped in the first round. He was winning the first round. He just got squared up and reckless. Boom. Pacquiao's quick and experienced, so he could capitalize on those stuff. So yeah, Keith Thurman, you know, I don't think that's right, man. Keith Thurman called out Crawford and he says, I want Crawford. We know Keith Thurman don't seemingly want Errol. And he said he will take Crawford because he's not convinced. And then Bomac comes behind that with Brian Custer did the interview with Keith Thurman. And then Brian Custer was on TBV on the call with Bomac. And he says, nah, we ain't checking for that. What does that do for us? I just feel like it's not the right approach. Like, I don't know. It's almost like, I hate to say it, but the proverbial beggars can't be choosers. Terence Crawford is with Top Rank, and they're not aligned. He's not aligned with the company that has the top welterweights in the talent pool. So it's like, how could you just, when there are good opportunities and good fights, nah, we don't want Ray Robinson. Nah, we don't want you guys. Nah, we don't want Kell Brook. Keith Thurman, Nah, you know, Sean Porter, nah, we buddies with him. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that don't make sense. And again, one of the strongest points I'm making is, even if that is your logic, how do you say we don't want Keith Thurman because he has, as I showed you, one loss to a Hall of Famer, Manny Pacquiao, literally one loss, and he don't have a belt. But everybody you fought outside of Jeff Horn didn't have a belt. That don't make sense, you know? Mean Machine, look, here's clips from the Mean Machine. I'm not going to play it for copyright reasons, but these are clips. Mean Machine didn't have no belt, right? So we know Kell Brook and Keith Thurman are better fights than that, bigger names than that, especially Keith Thurman, who just called him out. So to me, that don't make sense. And the other thing with the whole Keith Thurman situation is Keith Thurman as an individual and as a fighter, Keith, people would argue that that's his best welterweight. If, like, hypothetically, if Terence Crawford fought Keith Thurman next, like in December, we'll say, right? That would be his best welterweight name. Not only would it be his best welterweight name, I would take it a step further. There are many people that believe that a fight with Keith Thurman, despite coming off of a loss to Pacquiao, would be his best name on his whole entire resume. There's some people that would make that argument. If you don't think Keith Thurman would be a viable opponent for Terence Crawford, please explain why. And let me know who you favor in terms of who's a better name than Keith Thurman. 30 fights, 1 loss, 2 Pacquiao. Who on Crawford's resume would you say is better? Gamboa? Is Gamboa better than Keith Thurman? You know, in regards in the respective divisions, of course, obviously they're not same weight classes, but you see what I'm saying? Because that, I would say Gamboa is probably the most recognized Crawford fight outside. So, you know, bottom line is I'm a true boxing fan, and the Keith Thurman Crawford fight, he absolutely would get credit. There's no reason why he wouldn't. So I don't understand that standpoint from Bomac. Even the Kell Brook fight. And if you don't feel you'll get credit, like, the bottom line is Kell Brook and Keith Thurman are better fights than Crawford has probably fought at welterweight. I think a lot of people would agree with that statement. So if he don't feel he'll get any credit for those, then how are you fighting Amir Khan? Kell Brook was supposed to fight Amir Khan. Kell Brook's more durable than Amir Khan. Kell Brook has more power than Amir Khan. And it's a good backstory just because Errol fought Kell. You know, you might not get full credit because Kell Brook, since losing to Errol and Triple G, some people would say he's not the same fighter, but it's not going to be anything less than the opponents that he's faced at welterweight. You see what I'm saying? Like, he'll get more credit just based on the branding alone. Keith Thurman is a bigger brand than Mean Machine, than Jose Benavidez, especially at that time. And Jose Benavidez got shot in the leg, and then Bomac is saying, oh, we won't get credit for Keith because people would just make up excuses like, oh, his arm. But you fought Jose Benavidez, who had got shot in the leg, which is well documented. And I didn't make no excuses to the fight, but that's still who your promotion put you in with. So to me, this is not really a good look. I want to hear from Crawford, but that it doesn't sound realistic. It doesn't sound realistic that you're holding your hope out for 2 guys, and if it ain't the 2 guys, then you don't want to fight nobody, like nobody else. Like it just, the welterweight division is too stacked and too dense for it to only be 2 guys. I wouldn't want to hear this talk from anybody. I wouldn't. What if Keith Thurman said he only want Crawford or Pacquiao rematch? Nah. What about a Sean Porter rematch? Danny rematch? You guys, Sergey Lipinets, somebody. Like, it's just, I don't like that standpoint from today's welterweights in a stacked division. So hopefully Crawford will make some kind of comments on it. And then the other thing is Crawford just had a beef with Gary Russell, who, that's their business. But Gary Russell is like a featherweight. a 126er. So how does Kell Brook, a big welterweight, Keith Thurman, a pretty big welterweight, definitely a smart guy and a big puncher and big brands, you can entertain a Gary Russell Jr. beef, you know, and talk about street fighting him and, man, I'll punch you up and, you know, stuff like that. But then Keith Thurman don't make sense. But you could spend your time, waste time talking about Gary, who's a featherweight. I don't know. It just looks weird. It looks weird. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Hopefully they have a change of heart or make a response from Crawford's perspective. But I think Keith Thurman and Kell Brook, those are definitely acceptable fights. And I haven't heard anyone really complain over those, because at the end of the day, in a pandemic especially, those aren't any worse than Mean Machine and Unknown guys or Amir Khan, who has no chin. It's just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. We work it.
What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more sports. Get unlimited access to premium content with an ESPN Plus subscription. ESPN Plus offers a variety of content, including specials, behind the scenes, docuseries like Bruce Lee's Be Water, and much more. With an ESPN Plus subscription, you get access to a ton of classic archive fights and replays from boxing and the UFC. Big names like, "Hi, I'm Mike Tyson. Come and watch my fight." Floyd Mayweather, "Easy work. I'm rich." And Manny Pacquiao, "Yes, it's up to my promoter." Just to name a few. If that's not enough, you could get the ESPN bundle, which includes ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney Plus. All three apps, one low price. You don't want to miss out. Make sure you guys click that link in the description box of all of my videos. Ego, signing off.
So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.